It's time now for County-Wide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's County-Wide.
Welcome to County-Wide. I'm Paul David. Very good to have you in studio today. We're going to continue our talks about important items that are going on in the month of April. As we know, we've gone into fire restrictions a month earlier than usual because it's been dry. So this month we've talked defensible space. We've talked about evacuation. We're going to talk more about evacuation today, more detailed about that. Denny Folk from Emergency Management was in studio today. Last week we talked about equipment firefighters use to fight fires. Today, Yavapai County Sheriff's Captain Jeff Newnham's in studio today. Last time we talked to you, we were talking about Rescue 1, YCSO's Rescue 1 helicopter, and then YCSO Incident Management Team member Jim Miller. Good to have you guys in studio.
Thank you.
We're going to talk evacuation. Last year we had a few of those happen.
We did.
The Dosey fire, the Yarnell Hill fire, everyone remembers those very clearly. And so we kind of want to look back at that, what went right, what went wrong a little bit, and then kind of inform people on here's what might happen if you come knocking on my door.
Yes.
Maybe we should start there.
Well, you know, when you have a major fire come into your community, and if you live in a wildland interface where that's a threat, if we come knocking on your door, hopefully there's been several things that have happened through that notification process. And if we're going door to door at that time, we've probably already sent out the emergency notification system, our code red system, but we're going to be giving you some very specific information at that time to put you on standby for evacuation if there's time. And that's what people need to understand is, you know, each fire is different. You know, depending on the fire behavior, depending on where it starts, how close it is to the community. If we knock on your door, we may be telling you you need to prepare for evacuation, but we could also be telling you you need to evacuate immediately. So if we're knocking on your door and we're asking you to evacuate, hopefully you've, as a homeowner or a community member, you've already done some preparation in the months preceding that to prepare your family, your home for the possibility of evacuation. So during that door-to-door notification, and Jim Miller and our incident command team, he can talk a little bit about some of the resources that go into that, but we're going to be giving you a lot of information, where to go, where Red Cross is set up, where the animal shelters are set up. So there's going to be a lot of information that's passed on to that homeowner. And a lot of times those homeowners are going through such stress, they need to be walked through that process. And so that's why we do try to meet with them door to door so we can help them in the process and let them know this is the route that you're going to want to take. These are where the shelters are set up. You know, we're here to help you. Even the people that are going to door, if you have somebody who's handicapped, for instance, and they can't evacuate themselves, we're going to help them do that. So we're really there at that point in time to facilitate any need that they might have, but to also ensure that each resident has been notified, and we're trying to get as many of them out of harm's way as we possibly can.
When you do that, when you go door to door like that, what is kind of the reaction of the people when they open the door and they see you're standing there, or Jim, you're standing there? What's sort of their reaction?
You know, I think they're in shock. I mean, they're not expecting this to happen to their community. And even if you live in these communities that are surrounded by forest, you still are, even though you might be prepared, when it's actually happening to you, it's such a shock and such a hard thing to swallow that I think sometimes, like anybody, when you get in that stressful situation, you know, they don't know quite what to do next. And even if they've been prepared, it's very hard to leave your home, you know, leave all your personal belongings, leave your treasures that you have garnered through the years. And I know Jim has actually been on those teams that have gone door to door, so I'll let him speak about that.
You know, if you've got smoke and flame visible, a lot of people are aware when they go door to door that there's a fire in the community. And like Captain Newnham said, some people are prepared, some people aren't. It doesn't always catch them ready to go. Sometimes their husband or wife is shopping out of the neighborhood and they don't quite know how to get back together again.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So part of what we were talking about, making a plan ahead of time, is not only knowing what to pack, but if you're separated from one of your family members, need to have a meeting spot. We're going to ask everybody to go to the Red Cross Evacuation Center. The Red Cross Evacuation Center is going to get set up just about the same time that the evacuation is being called. And we really want everybody to go to the evacuation center to register.
I noticed that that's been kind of different over the last couple of years, especially when we've had some of these cases go on where I'll do a few stories each time, and I think it becomes a staple of the story that if you've not checked in yet with the Red Cross, do so. Why is that so important? We should probably hit on that.
Well, it helps other people if they're trying to find family members. They can check with the Red Cross and find out if their family's gotten out of there. In the case of the Yarnell fire, we had some structures lost, and we were able to go to the Red Cross and identify that some of those homeowners had gotten out okay.
That was one of the big concerns in the fires that we've had over the last few years is how are we going to, when we go door to door, there's a system put up. When we ask people to, for instance, if I come to your house and ask you to evacuate, I ask you to tie a white towel or a white sheet on your house so I know that you've actually left that residence. But there's a system that we need, and the Red Cross has helped us with emergency management, is to have a log of everybody that has evacuated. What's your contact information? How do I get a hold of you? Because you may have family in Phoenix or Tucson, you may not be staying at the Red Cross shelter, but how do I get a hold of you if I need to get a hold of you reference to your residence? The Red Cross has been instrumental in that. And like Jim was saying, what we were able to do on the Yarnell is the Red Cross supplied us with a roster of every resident that had checked in. And unfortunately, we did end up losing 128 houses on the Yarnell fire. We were able to sit down with each one of those residents at shelters and face-to-face make sure that they knew that they had lost a structure or that their structure was saved. So it was very instrumental in us meeting face-to-face with all the residents that we could, and to make sure that we didn't have any other loss of life. We had no loss of civilian life on that fire, and that's where the Red Cross really was instrumental in helping us make sure that we knew where everybody was during that fire. And that's why we always ask people to check in at the shelters, even if you're not going to stay at the shelters. Check in there so we can contact you some way.
We should hit Code Red. We wanted to make sure we hit Code Red. I told you when you got here today that Coconino County just switched to the Code Red system, and so everyone that was on the old alert system has now been switched into it, and you could add yourself to it. Yavapai County's been under the Code Red system.
We have.
So tell me a little bit about that and how do we sign up for that?
Code Red is such a great system. And,
why?
And Code Red is our emergency notification system. And what that does is it allows us in a critical incident, such as a fire or a missing child or any other type of critical incident, we can draw a radius around a specific point and start reaching out to cell phones and landlines and give out critical information to the residents in that area. But what the emergency notification system requires is it requires those folks that live in that area to register with Code Red, and they can do that right on our website. And what a lot of folks, they think if they have a landline, that their landline is automatically registered to the system. And by default, it may be, but if you have switched your phone numbers, then that system only updates every couple times every year. So if you have a landline and cell phones, it's really important that you go into our website and register each one of those phone numbers with the Code Red system. So if we do have a critical incident where you live, all of that primary information, whether it's prepare to evacuate or keep an eye out for a 3-year-old little boy wearing a yellow shirt walking that disappeared, that information gets to every single phone number that you have. We had residents in both fires that had registered their cell phones but had not registered their landline, and so that information didn't come to their landline, and vice versa. We had one individual that called us that had registered his cell phone that owns property in Yarnell, but he stays in New York City most of the time. Well, he got that information in New York City that there was a fire in that area. And so it's so important that people realize that they need to register, and that just builds the program And it's a very successful way of getting information out.
Okay, we have to take a break, but you can find out more about this. Just go to the Yavapai County website, yavapai.us. There's a search box up there. You can type in emergency evacuations, what I did this morning, and it pulled up all this information in front of us. So, Yavapai County Sheriff's Captain Jeff Newnham in studio today, also YCSO Incident Management Team member Jim Miller. I'm Paul David. This is Countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Ronnie had huge aspirations.
He knew he could get pills in the community.
He found his body in an apartment in Telford.
I never thought my son would take prescription drugs without a prescription.
Secure your medications and talk with your kids. Visit drugfree.org.
Wake the sun, tell him that I've begun to dream of things to come, and tell the trees not to look for me. I'm going to find some peace of mind. Wake the sun, wake the sun, wake the sun, wake the sun.
I would steal pills from my friend's mom.
We talk about all the common drugs, but never prescription medication.
I was addicted to pills.
Had I more knowledge, I would have done things differently.
Secure your medications and talk with your kids. Visit drugfree.org.
A single ember from a wildfire can travel over a mile. That ember can ignite and destroy your home or community. You can't control where that ember will land. Only what happens before it does. Visit fireadapted.org to learn how you can help protect your community from wildfires.
Welcome back to Countywide. We're talking about evacuation today and the things you need to know in case somebody comes to your door and knocks on it. And you should always be prepared just in case it does happen to you. I think we all think it's never going to happen to me, but
right,
you know, it could. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned people that live within the wildland urban phase, you know, and I think to myself, we all do. I mean, if you get just outside of Cottonwood, it's nothing but, you know, desert and forest from here to Camp Verde. I feel like we all kind of have this in common together. What if you come to my door, you knock on it, and we had some of these cases last year, and I'm sure we had to do it every single time. Mm-hmm. What if I decide I don't want to leave? What if you, Jim, you come to my door and you say, we need you to evacuate, you have 10 minutes to grab your 4 Ps and out the door you go. What happens then?
Well, when the evacuation teams go door to door, they have a checklist. And so if they can make contact with the people in the house, they note that on their logs and everything. And then they tie an orange surveyor's tape outside the house that lets deputies know as they drive down the street that that house has been notified. When the residents leave, they're supposed to tie a white towel on the outside of the house. And as the deputy drives down the street, he can see that they've been notified and left, or just been notified, haven't left. If somebody tells the volunteer that's going door to door that they need assistance with evacuation, or maybe the neighbor does, or they decide they don't want to leave, the person's going door to door or in radio contact with the incident command post, and they'll pass that message on, and we'll go ahead and handle whatever that situation is. If they need assistance, we'll send a vehicle in to get them. If they refuse to evacuate, we'll pass that message on to a deputy and let the deputy handle that. So that allows the volunteers to keep moving.
Keep moving.
Yeah. You know, and just to elaborate on that a little bit, Paul, if you're, as a resident, if you don't want to leave your home, the way we interpret the laws, we're not going to force you to leave. Unless you have children and you're jeopardizing some young children, then that might be an area that we get involved in. But we believe that you have the right as a homeowner to stay inside your property if you so choose. Now, we document that, but what we ask people to understand is when we're asking residents to evacuate, throughout the fire, we're trying to keep that fire zone, the entire zone around the fire, free for firefighters and those folks that are trying to save that community, free to move around in that fire zone. If we have residents that choose not to evacuate and then they're trying to go and get resources to sustain themselves, the grocery stores or whatnot, that blocks the ability and hampers the ability for those firefighters to really save that community. It also, what will happen is the evacuation route of a firefighter, once these trigger points are reached for them, they're using the same evacuation routes as the community is. So as they're fighting the fire, if the fire behavior changes on them to where they now need to evacuate, and you have a lot of residents that have decided to stay up until the very last minute, then the bottleneck occurs and you have many more people now threatened because those firefighters, as they try to fight the wildland fire, they're not concerning themselves with the residents and saving the lives of the residents. They're now trying to save their own lives. And that's where we see a big issue is, and that's why we want to evacuate all the residents to a safe area so those firefighters can get in to save that community.
Now, you mentioned, if I do decide to stay on my property, there are rules I have to follow in order to stay on my property. Let's say I went to the store a couple of weeks ago and I was scheduled to go tomorrow. You knock on my door this afternoon at, say, 4 o'clock and say, evacuate.
Right.
Well, I don't have a lot of food or water, but I don't want to leave my property.
Correct.
But I have to stay on my property.
You have to stay on your property. If you step, now your private property is your property. If you step off that private property, we treat it as you've now stepped into the fire zone, and we're going to escort you out of that fire zone and restrict you from entering back into that fire zone. A lot of people don't understand is once they're asked to evacuate, we're not going to facilitate the needs of folks that we want to evacuate. If you stay on your property and 50 other people stay on their property and they want to be able to go back and forth to the store, we don't have the ability to escort those residents to and from the store through the fire zone. That takes too many resources to do. And
Captain Noonan, will you bring me groceries?
No, I won't.
Okay.
No, I won't. But I will help you evacuate, and then I'll try to convince you to come with me, and I'll do anything that I can to get you out of the fire zone. But I can't jeopardize the lives of my men now to go back deeply into a fire zone to bring you groceries, to facilitate you staying in that fire zone. That's too difficult, and we don't have the resources to do that.
Right. Right, exactly. And Jim, you mentioned before the show we wanted to make, and you kind of touched on it here too, that if you know somebody in your neighborhood that is unable to, completely care for themselves or be able to evacuate, maybe can't drive, elderly, you said handicapped?
Yeah, a lot of times somebody may be invalid inside the house. I know my wife right now just got a knee replacement. She couldn't get up and answer the door right now. So, neighbors need to watch out for each other. Even talk about it ahead of time as part of the pre-planning. If they know of somebody that has trouble, needs assistance in evacuation or any other thing, make sure and tell the person that comes door to door, and we'll try and work through those problems.
Okay, we have to take another break. But before we take our break here, just real quick while I guess the music's playing right now, but go to the Yavapai County website, and you can just type in Code Red. We want to make sure everybody signs up for the Code Red program. That way, if something's happening in your area, they can get notification to you right away. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break. Countywide will be back in just a second.
A full life, measured in seats, starts with the right ones early on. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Learn how to prevent deaths and injuries by using the right car seat for your child's age and size.
Know what?
What?
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. I mean, check out these two. It's Flirt City over here.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like my human is definitely into your human.
Oh, look! I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog. Oh, look, they're doing that thing where they put their arms around each other.
She kicked up a leg. It's like in the movies.
That's awesome. Looks like we're going to be hanging out a little bit more.
One of the areas still maturing in an adolescent brain is the prefrontal cortex. So when we take drugs, we alter key motivational circuits, changing the wiring needed for the cognitive function of the brain, until we can't totally deal with things like memory, thinking things out, and even learning stuff.
The signs are there. So is our help. Visit the partnership at drugfree.org for practical advice on coping with teen drug use.
When you're out there, there's no telling what you'll find.
I see it! I see it! Oh, look at you.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to Countywide. We've got a couple minutes left in the program. Again, we want you to go to the Yavapai County website and find the Code Red alert information and then sign up for that. So just in case there's an evacuation, and like Jeff Newnham said, as they draw that map on that map, it'll just notify everybody within that. If landlines, cell phones, all that stuff has to be registered.
Correct.
We were going to hit on evacuations of animals because I noticed during the Yarnell and Dosey fire last year, it was really amazing how not only did we have dogs and cats, but we had cattle and horses, and that all seemed to take care of itself, and we've got a wonderful group that helps handle that. What I really wanted to get into, and we've got just a couple minutes left, like I said, is I think one of the concerns people may have is when they're being told to evacuate their home is that well, now no one's there to watch my property. So how is that situation handled?
Well, at the Sheriff's Office, two of our primary responsibilities during a fire is the evacuation, which we've talked about, but also the protection of property and life after an evacuation. So we really ramp up our patrol efforts, and we bring in squads, multiple squads, where we have 2 men in a car that are driving those neighborhoods nonstop, and they're looking for anybody that's out and about. Because once we establish a fire zone, and I tell you, you need to evacuate, if you're in that fire zone, you're either going to be escorted out or you're going to be arrested for being in that fire zone. So we have zero tolerance for anybody that steps off their property or if they're out and about in that situation. But we take it very, very seriously. We even call up resources from other agencies. So in the Yarnell, for instance, in that small town of Yarnell, we probably had 5 patrol cars with 2 men in those 5 patrol cars constantly patrolling that town just to make sure that there was everything was okay. And as you know, we had 3 individuals who decided to break into a home, and we within a week had those 3 individuals in custody and charged with those burglaries. So
you had actually spoke to them down in the fire zone, and they were heading out. And,
that's correct.
And you remembered that you had spoken to them.
That's correct.
About what had happened down there.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons we have zero tolerance for anybody who stays in that fire zone. If you're off your property, you will be escorted out of that, because we're protecting the property of the folks that have evacuated, and we take that very seriously. We take that as our responsibility.
Okay, so the big things we want to know today is, first of all, everyone should be prepared just in case there's an evacuation at your house. So pills, papers, pets, prescriptions. I guess that's 2 P's, the same P's there. But anyways, there's 4 P's on there. And then we want to make sure you've got enough stuff to last you. I think it's a couple of days or a week amount of time. The Code Red is the best thing people can do.
Yes.
Code Red. And if you are evacuated, at least stop by the Red Cross shelter and let them know your name, your address, and your contact information.
Yeah, you're not required to stay at the shelter, but we would like everybody to register.
Right. It makes total sense to me.
Yes, yeah. That's huge for us.
And then why would I not want you to have my information, so if something does happen to my home and my property, that you can't contact me and get a hold of me. So, all right. That's going to wrap up today's show. Captain Jeff Newnham, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
Jim, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming in. That's today's Countywide, and we will talk to you again next time.